All right. Well, good afternoon. Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Moore. I'm the host of the English Language Testing Society's Testing in 10 monthly interview series. And this month, I'm lucky enough to have two individuals here with me. I've got Dr. Fatemeh Khonamri, from the University of Mazandaran, Babolsar, Iran. Okay, and I hope I'm not doing too terrible a job on the name there. And Mohammed Kazemian, okay, from Guilan University of Medical Sciences in Rasht, Guilan. Okay, and a pleasure to have you both. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be invited.
Thank you so much. Well, so we'll get into a couple questions here. So the first question, the two of you recently had a paper on educator attitudes to including intercultural competence in overall language assessment. You had that recently published in the TESOL EJ journal. And what led the two of you and your co-authors to investigate this area?
This is really an interesting question. The idea behind this study was an interview paper that I read from late Professor Sharifian, which was published in Asian Pacific Journal of Second and Foreign Language Education in 2016. As a matter of fact, I was intrigued by the interview because Sharifian provided some novel ideas in terms of intercultural competence, IC. One of his standpoints is redefining language proficiency test in the light of IC. Then I went through some references related to the IC and its rationales. Finally, I proposed the idea to my colleagues who used to be my MA program professors, and they accepted to have a contribution in this study.
Great. Good. The next question maybe I'll direct to Dr. Khonamri, Fatemeh.
Yes.
Why hasn't intercultural competence been assessed often in language proficiency tests? It seems like a very important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, based on our own research findings and other scholars' attitude, and if you look at the literature on intercultural competence, there seems to be two polarized sides. There is this first group that believes that the inclusion of IC in language proficiency tests seems to be a very daunting task, and because of that, they avoid doing it. And the other scholars take the view that IC should be included in language proficiency tests, no matter how hard it is, and how long it might take to test it. So, actually, the first group finds it tedious and arduous because the concept of interculturality in general is very broad and subjective, and it is really hard to assess. So, and to date, you cannot find a systematic framework for the operationalization of assessment of intercultural competence in language education. As far as I am aware, some scholars like Fantini, Sikru, Byram, and others have tried their best to develop some assessment tools, but still they themselves confess that there's a long way to go and there is a lot more to do, and mainly because as far as research has shown to date, it is possible to assess degrees of intercultural competence. And in so doing, we can use a mix of qualitative and quantitative methods, which includes interviews, observation, judgment call by self and others. But still, as I mentioned earlier, there is a lot more to do, and a lot of research is needed to be done in order to find a reliable and easy to use tool. So that's why it actually hasn't been included in high stake language proficiency tests so far.
Very interesting. Yes. Good. Mohammed, why would English
Yes.
language students benefit from being assessed on their intercultural competence level? Why would they benefit from being assessed?
Well, this is a thought-provoking question. We are living in a globalized world, and the idea of global village has actually already happened. As a result of this, the importance of IC is being increasingly recognized by educators and employees alike. Today's world needs learners who are prepared for living in multicultural world, and employers likewise need employees who are skillful enough in intercultural work situations and are aware of different cultures. So I take the view that being aware of some cultural nuances is beneficial for a successful communication. However, sadly, this feature is absent not just in language proficiency tests, but also in language teaching context. It seems that to a large extent, language teachers see a language learning as basically and traditionally linguistic in nature and focus more on developing such skills. Although culture is the fifth language skill and should be taken into consideration, it has often been thought of as an additional component for languages, and in many cases has not been well integrated with language component itself. As Bennett et al. 2003 mentioned that ignoring this phenomenon leads students become fluent, full L2 learners who can speak L2 well, although they are not familiar with cultural values, beliefs, and dimensions.
That make interesting points, and I think from many of us, if we've traveled to another country and perhaps learned a bit of the language and thought, hey, I can talk to people when I get there, and then you find that you maybe make some mistakes or people look at you a little funny, and you think, okay, I probably didn't really do that right. There's something I missed there. That's a fantastic point. Yeah. Let's see. And then Fatemeh, in your opinion, should the assessment of intercultural competence, should it be approached differently for inner circle and outer circle settings? As I think you mentioned this in your paper, the inner circle, of course, obviously with native speaking countries or where the majority of people are speaking the language, like in England or the United States, et cetera, or outer circles, such as, for example, in Iran.
Yes, right. If it's okay, Mohammed is going to answer this question as well.
Okay, sure. That's really an interesting question, Eric. There is no doubt that the English language is primary means of communication around the world. Plus, the number of non-native English speakers has been more than those of native English speakers. In fact, by the emergence of world Englishes, the dichotomy between nativeness and non-nativeness has been broken down. The reason is that world Englishes, as the predominant international language currently in use, focuses not only on varieties, but also the promotion of international standard without association of any one nation or cultural ideology. Moreover, as we discussed in our paper, world Englishes and intercultural competence assessment are inextricably intertwined, and world Englishes, in fact, is a cradle in which intercultural competence assessment has been growing up under the supervision of it. In fact, world Englishes intends to increase cross-cultural collaboration and understanding. So I believe we should take care of both circle settings in similar ways.
Okay, good. And so different situations for different learners, of course, right? How important is intercultural competence for the average English as a foreign language learner who's planning to stay in their home country and just maybe needs to pass the test for admittance to a university in their home country or for a job, something like that? How important is that? And then how important is intercultural competence, would you say, for those who are going to study maybe like in the United States, for example, an English speaking country or where that's the predominant language?
Okay, thank you very much, first of all, for asking this question. Because in the field of language teaching these days, the learning environments are becoming more and more culturally diverse. And so mainly because English nowadays is being considered as an international language, as a language that acts as a lingua franca. So I think that in order to improve the communication between students in these intercultural learning settings, according to the concept of communicative competence put forth by Hines, it's of paramount importance for the foreign language learners to develop their intercultural competence and at the same time become aware of intercultural sensitivity to so that they can have a successful communication. So there is definitely no doubt about the importance of intercultural competence as one important component of communicative competence. To me, if this component, if not more important than the others, it is not one that can be easily ignored or discarded. So even for the average foreign language learner who intends to stay inside the country and only wishes to pass a high-stake test, I think that this is an inseparable part of the language learning process. I mean, the ability to appreciate and understand other cultures, that is exactly the same thing, which is called intercultural sensitivity, and also to adjust their communication style to meet the needs of people in culturally diverse settings, which is related to intercultural communication skills. In fact, this is an ability that strengthens the learning of the new language for the learners and helps them to understand it in a much more meaningful way. So this becomes even more important in the second case, where students plan to work or study in an English-speaking context. So without any doubt, without this skill, these students will be unable to interact effectively across, cultural boundaries and will face a lot of difficulty.
Great, thank you for your answer, and a pleasure to have the both of you here today. It was extremely interesting to hear about what your research, what you've done, your thoughts on this very, very important area. So I'd like to thank both Dr. Fatemeh Khonamri and Mr. Mohammed Kazemian for being here with me today. And I'd like to thank the In Times In Company Limited of South Korea, their speaking proficiency assessment, for sponsoring this important interview today here for May. So thank you very much for your time, both of you, and a pleasure.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, being invited. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your invitation.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.